The Raffles and the Fullerton Hotels, Singapore. The Raffles Hotel is a colonial style luxury hotel in the downtown core district of Singapore. It was established by Armenian hoteliers, the Sarkis brothers, in 1887. The hotel was named after British statesman Sir Thomas Stamford Raffles, the founder of colonial era Singapore. It is the flagship property of Raffles Hotels and Resorts and is managed by Accor Hotels after Accor acquired FRHI Hotels and Resorts. The hotel is owned by Qatar-based government-owned Qatar Hospitality. Raffles Hotel Singapore started as a privately owned beach house in the early 1830s. It first became Emerson's Hotel when Dr. Charles Emerson leased the building in 1878. Upon his death in 1883, the hotel closed, and the Raffles Institution stepped in to use the building as a boarding house until Dr. Emerson's lease expired in September 1887. Almost immediately after the first lease expired, the Sarkis brothers leased the property from Syed Mohammed Al Sagoff, its owner, with the intention of turning it into a high-end hotel. A few months later, on December 1st, 1887, the 10-room Raffles Hotel opened. Its proximity to the beach and its reputation for high standards in services and accommodations made the hotel popular with wealthy clientele. Within the hotel's first decade, 3 new buildings were added on to the original beach house. First, a pair of 2-story wings were completed in 1890, each containing 22 guest suites. Soon afterward, the Sarkis brothers leased a neighboring building at number 3 Beach Road, renovated it, and in 1894, the Palm Court wing was completed. The new additions brought the hotel's total guest rooms to 75. A few years later, a new main building was constructed on the site of the original beach house. Designed by architect Regent Alfred John Bidwell of Swan and McLaren, it was completed in 1899. The new main building offered numerous state-of-the-art, for the time, features, including powered ceiling fans and electric lights. In fact, the Raffles Hotel was the first hotel in the region to have electric lights. The hotel continued to expand over the years, with the addition of wings, a veranda, a ballroom, a bar, a billiards room, as well as other buildings and rooms. In 1902, a tiger that had escaped from a nearby circus was shot in a storage space under the bar and billiards room, which was originally constructed at an elevation. The Great Depression spelled trouble for the Raffles Hotel, and in 1931, the Sarkis brothers declared bankruptcy. In 1933, the financial troubles were resolved, and a public company called Raffles Hotel Limited was established. Upon the start of the Japanese occupation of Singapore on February 15, 1942, it is said that the Japanese soldiers encountered the guests in the Raffles Hotel dancing one final waltz. Meanwhile, staff buried the hotel's silver, including the silver beef trolley, in the Palm Court. During World War II, the Raffles Hotel was renamed Shonan Yokan, incorporating Shonan, Light of the South, the Japanese name for occupied Singapore, and Ryokan, the name for a traditional Japanese inn. The hotel was reclaimed in 1945 during Operation Terrorese by the British Navy. Stanley Reddington raised the British naval jack on top of the Raffles Hotel. In 1987, a century after it first opened, Austrian writer and researcher Andreas Augustin discovered the long lost original drawings of the Raffles Hotel, hidden in a Singaporean archive. That year, these drawings were published for the first time in the book The Raffles Treasury. The Raffles Hotel was declared a national monument by the Singapore government in 1987. In 1989, the hotel closed to undergo an extensive renovation that lasted 2 years and cost 160 million Singapore dollars. The hotel reopened on September 16, 1991. While the hotel was restored to the grand style of its 1915 heyday, significant changes were made. All guest rooms were converted to suites. In addition, Long Bar, which was a favorite spot of celebrities such as Somerset Maugham, was relocated from the lobby to a new adjoining shopping arcade. Long Bar is also where the national cocktail, the Singapore Sling, was invented by bartender Yan Tom Moon. How it was used in trade deals and why the alcohol can be either rum or gin is a different story covered in a different video. On July 18, 2005, it was announced that Colony Capital LLC would purchase Raffles Holdings, which included the entire chain of Raffles hotels, including the Raffles Hotel itself, for 1.45 billion Singapore dollars. In April 2010, it was reported that a Qatari sovereign wealth fund bought the Raffles Hotel for 275 million Singapore dollars. In addition to taking over the Raffles Hotel, the Qatar Investment Authority would inject 467 million Singapore dollars into Fairmont Raffles Hotels International in exchange for a 40% stake in the luxury hotel chain. At one time, the Raffles Hotel maintained a hotel museum. It displayed memorabilia such as photographs, silver and china items, postcards and menus, as well as old and rare editions of the works of the famous writers who had stayed there. The museum also displayed photographs of its famous guests and visitors. The Raffles Hotel Museum closed in 2012. In December 2015, the Fairmont Raffles brands were purchased by the French multinational hotel group Accor Hotels. A major renovation of the hotel was undertaken starting January 2017, and the hotel closed in December 2017 to allow renovation work to proceed. The rooms were refurbished and soundproofed, and the number of suites increased from 103 to 115. New technologies were incorporated, and a new marble floor was installed. Its various food and beverage outlets were revamped, and the writer's bar, which was formerly in a corner of the lobby, was given its own space. Its former Jubilee Theatre was transformed into a ballroom, and the hotel reopened on August 1st, 2019. The hotel won the award for the renovation and restoration from the AHEAD Asia Awards. The Raffles Hotel has a shopping arcade with 40 specialty boutiques. The arcade also houses most of the hotel's restaurants. In popular culture, the Raffles is the setting for Yu Murakami's novel and its film adaptation titled Raffles Hotel. The film was shot on location. The hotel was featured as a Japanese stronghold in Medal of Honor, Rising Sun. The hotel was where Nick and Rachel stayed when they arrived in Singapore in the film Crazy Rich Asians. The Raffles Hotel was the subject of Paul O'Grady's Orient for Carlton Television. The Raffles Hotel was featured in episodes of the BBC ABC co production Tenko, with the majority of Series 3 taking place in the hotel. The hotel won Best Heritage Hotel Awards by Tripzilla magazine in 2017. Now we will start with our own tour of the Raffles Hotel. The first stop is the iconic doorman at the front of the hotel. The iconic Raffles doorman. A stranger to none is the iconic liveried Sikh doorman and the Raffles ivory facade. Being ambassadors of the Raffles Hotel Singapore, our Raffles doormen, recognized by their immaculate white turbans, are our most notable and most photographed colleagues. They are always the first to welcome all our guests into the hotel, including heads of states, dignitaries, and celebrities, and also have traveled around the world to receive countless awards on behalf of the hotel. Besides welcoming the guests, our doormen also pay attention to some rather interesting characters who have also crossed our doors. In 1904, a wild boar was on the way to the market and escaped into the hotel. Our doorman was in hot pursuit of the wild boar and wrestled with it to the ground. As we enter the front door, we are actually entering the Bras Basah wing. The Bras Basah wing. Did you know that the horse stable, formerly owned by Abrams Horse Repository, used to occupy the land where the hotel's Bras Basah wing is located? Back in the day, horse carriages were one of the main modes of transportation in Singapore. Horses housed within these stables were commonly used to transport guests of the Raffles. In 1904, the owners moved the horse stables up to Orchard Road, and the Sarkis brothers built the new street-fronting building in its place, called the Bras Basah wing. The debut of the Bras Basah wing marked another significant milestone for Raffles Hotel Singapore, housing what was agreed to be 19 of the most commodious staterooms in the East. This new wing secured Raffles' status as the largest and most successful hotel in the Straits settlements. Its reputation as the finest caravanserai east of the Suez was now undisputed. The extension of the wing increased suite accommodations to meet demand for rooms in the city. It consisted of a row of first-class shops on the ground floor, with suites on 2 floors above, which were deliberately kept separate from the shops and were accessible only through the hotel's main entrance by crossing a covered bridge. During the hotel's first restoration in 1989, the presence of the Abrams establishment was strongly felt when the earth was upturned during excavation works at the Palm Court wing. The odd horseshoe was uncovered, and even the skeleton of a fully grown horse. The gravel flooring at the hotel's current driveway brings back memories where horse carriages in the early days will come to the main entrance of the hotel and drop off guests. Here is the front of the hotel today and one of the doormen. A few more doormen on a different day. Next, a few cups of tea in the main restaurant area. Sipping very expensive tea with a bit of cake. Next, we go into the Raffles Boutique, which used to be the Raffles Museum. A better look at entering the museum. Here is the treasure of the boutique. This is a full-size replica of the tiger that entered the hotel in 1902. His story is on the plaque, and it will be told in greater detail in a different video. Next is the story of the long bar and the Singapore sling. In a previous documentary, the history of the rum rations and gin carried to Singapore and the ballast of the Royal Navy ships was described. It was also described how cocktails were made to welcome trading officials in their shops at Singapore. The following describes the origin of the Singapore cocktail itself, as it used the gin brought to Singapore by the Royal Navy ships. Experience the original Singapore sling at Long Bar. Visit the iconic Long Bar and discover impeccable tipples with the finest ingredients. After close to a century, the tradition of throwing peanut shells to the floor still remains, making it the only location in Singapore where littering is accepted. Celebrate the cherished heritage of the legendary Singapore sling and try it in the Long Bar today. With a rose tint, tall Raffles glass, and crisp pineapple and cherry garnish, the Singapore sling continues to be a favorite among guests even after a century. The Singapore sling elates guests with a perfect fusion of acidity, sweetness, and bitterness, coupled with a dash of alcohol, while remaining aesthetically pleasing. Yam Tom Boon was a talented Hainanese bartender in the 1900s, helmed with years of experience managing bars, hotels, and restaurants in Asia. After being hired by Raffles Hotel Singapore, he worked as a bartender in the Long Bar, then located in Cad's Alley. It was during this period that an undisputed legacy was born. Alcohol was increasing in popularity in the 1900s, and it was common for gentlemen to visit Long Bar to drink. However, women could not consume alcohol publicly back then due to etiquette, dictating that women could not drink alcohol in public. Began cleverly used clear alcohol and cherry liqueur to innovate and provide ladies with an alcoholic beverage masked in pink to enjoy. The feminine flair led people to think that it was a socially acceptable drink for women, which quickly made the legendary Singapore sling a firm favorite. The staircase to the second floor, where the Long Bar is located, has many information panels as well. 1887, Raffles, Singapore, named after Sir Stamford Raffles, the founder of Singapore, opened on 1st December 1887 as a 10-room hotel by the Sarkis brothers. The hotel has since been a haunt for adventurers, movie stars, authors, and journalists. 1915, Cad's Alley was first located at the main hotel entrance where tables were placed next to one another, making it a vantage point from which male visitors surveyed the procession of ladies. Bartender Niam Tom Boon saw this and decided to create a cocktail that looked like a fruit juice, but was actually infused with gin and other liqueurs. With that, the Singapore sling was born. 1960s, when the old ballroom of Raffles opened in 1921 at the current hotel's driveway, guests would gather at the ballroom for drinks or sometimes to dance. The idea of a long bar counter was conceived around the 1960s, and it was a long counter that almost covered the breadth of the ballroom, which was about 40 feet long. The counter was initially on the right side of the ballroom, facing Beach Road. 1980s. When the old ballroom was added on the driveway, the entrance to the hotel was on the left of the hotel, and it was observed that guests who were coming into the hotel have to walk across the ballroom to reach the long bar counter. It was then decided to move the counter to the left side of the ballroom, which was closer to the entrance of the hotel. 1991. Following complete 2.5 years of restoration, Raffles Hotel Singapore reopened on 16th September 1991, and the historic Long Bar found its current home in the Raffles Hotel Arcade. 2015. Raffles Singapore is paying tribute to one of the world's most iconic cocktails, as the Singapore Sling marks its centennial anniversary this year. 2018. The historic Long Bar has been fully restored and continues its tradition as the home of the Singapore Sling, where the decor marries architecture and contemporary plantation inspired motifs. Today, the Singapore Sling can be enjoyed in bars and lounges around the world, from New York to London, Paris, Tokyo, and Shanghai. The Singapore Sling continues today with the addition of a new interactive element. Enhance your Singapore Sling experience by catching this unique cocktail shaker in action. Hand cranked and specially custom made for the Long Bar, it shakes up 18 Singapore Slings at one go in style. The iconic Singapore Sling, a positive impact on environmental sustainability. 1. Distributed by Eco Spirits. Mixes are delivered by low carbon spirits distribution technology. 2. Joining Eco Spirits technology. Raffles Hotel Singapore is the first hotel in the world to use the Eco Spirits technology. 3. Ingredients delivered in EcoTote format, saving thousands of glass bottles per year. 4. Eliminating plastic straws. The iconic cocktail is served with straws made by potato starch. 5. Healing our planet. Raffles Hotel plants one native tree in Indonesia for every 25 glasses served. 6. Reducing packaging waste. Through the use of Luxardo cherries as garnishes and receiving bitters and large, low waste formats. 7. Weighing down carbon emission, dropping 200 grams of CO2 per serving with Eco Spirits. Singapore Sling Day. On 27th June 2021, Long Bar celebrates the inaugural Singapore Sling Day in conjunction with International Pineapple Day, a special ode to the tropical fruit, an emblem of hospitality and key ingredient in our iconic world famous cocktail. A fine mural depicting the early 20th century at the bar near the Long Bar entrance. Waiting for our turn to enter. And finally, the doorway to the bar. The plantation style paddle fans on the ceiling. A huge bag of peanuts. And time to start cracking shells, throwing the shells around and enjoying the cocktails. Here's a better look at the cocktails and the bag of peanuts. Our waiter and our cocktails. Doing the peanut shells on the floor thing. fiasco explaining the peanut shells on the floor thing in Japanese.
You're on. Oh, shut up.
はい、私は今日ラッフルホテルに来てます。シンガポールテイルになってます。それとここにはピーナッツこんなにあります。これはここの伝統で気晴らしのためにこれを食べながら、あとはなります。これは
Nagimasu means to throw something in Japanese.
これを投げます。
This ends our tour of the Raffles Hotel. The Fullerton Hotel. The Fullerton Hotel Singapore is a 5-star luxury hotel near the mouth of the Singapore River in the downtown core of the central area, Singapore. It was originally known as the Fullerton Building and also as the General Post Office Building. The address is 1 Fullerton Square. The Fullerton Building was named after Robert Fullerton, the first governor of the Straits Settlements, 1826 to 1829. Commissioned in 1924 as part of the British colony's centennial celebrations, the building was designed as an office building by Major P. H. Keyes of Keyes and Dowdeswell, a Shanghai firm of architects, which won the project through an architectural design competition. The architectural firm also designed the Capitol Theatre, its adjoined Capitol Building, and the Singapore General Hospital. In 2015, it was designated as a National Monument of Singapore. History: Fort Fullerton and the Singapore Stone. The northern end of the building covers the site of Fort Fullerton, a fort built in 1829 to defend the settlement against any naval attacks. The fort consisted of an artillery barracks, a house for the officers, barracks for soldiers, and a 68-pounder gun guarding the entrance to the river, which used to stand on the location known as Fullerton Square. In 1843, the fort was extended after a sandstone monolith, the Singapore Stone, with an inscription possibly dating back to the 13th century, was demolished. The Singapore Stone was, unfortunately, destroyed by the British. A fragment of this monolith was salvaged and preserved in the collection of the National Museum at Stamford Road. However, there were several criticisms as well as apprehensions regarding the building of Fort Fullerton. Merchants thought that it was a waste to use this prime location of the city for military instead of trading purposes, which would have prevented Singapore from generating more revenue and boosting its trading business. They all were also worried that they would be in the direct line of fire if there were any attacks on the fort, because the offices along the Singapore River were situated in close proximity to the fort. The fort was also said to be incapable of deterring any potential attacks from the sea and had very low efficacy. Following these criticisms, the fort was finally demolished in 1873. The fort gave way to the first General Post Office and the Exchange Building in 1874. Plans to erect the Fullerton Building were drawn up in 1920. However, due to a lack of funds, construction only began in February 1924. During the initial groundwork, excavations revealed the gun casements of the old Fort Fullerton. In fact, the Fullerton Building was built over reclaimed land. Built at a cost of 4.1 million US dollars equivalent, and after delays of a few months, the building was completed in June 1928. The Fullerton Building was opened on June 27, 1928, by the governor, Sir Hugh Clifford, who suggested the building to be named after Robert Fullerton. The building had 5 founding tenants. These were the General Post Office, the Exchange, the Singapore Club, now Singapore Town Club, the Marine Department, and the Import and Export Department, later the Ministry of Trade and Industry. It also housed the Chamber of Commerce and various government departments dealing with agriculture, fisheries, and forestry. One of the rooms in the Fullerton building was where the late Finance Minister, Dr. Goh Kong Sui, wrote many of his budget speeches for Singapore. The building was designed to utilize natural ventilation, thus has 4 internal air wells to cool the interiors. The Fullerton Hotel was an important commercial zone in Singapore, attracting many European immigrants, and soon became the core of major business activity. Many European businesses were set up at Fullerton Square, together with large banks such as the Chartered Bank and HSBC. It also housed the Club for the Colonial Elite, an exclusive club that took up almost 7,000 square meters, 75,000 square feet, of the upper floors. A lighthouse was built on the Fullerton building, called the Fullerton Light. The lighthouse was used to guide ships ashore and anchor along the piers. It was built to replace the Fort Canning light, which was decommissioned in 1879 since it was gradually blocked because of the construction of the more high-rise buildings in Singapore. The location of the previous lighthouse is now occupied by the Lighthouse Restaurant. The location of the Fullerton Hotel was once referred to as Mile Zero before the introduction of the modern road system. All locations in Singapore were measured and stemmed from Mile Zero. General Post Office. The building was originally commissioned as the General Post Office, GPO. The GPO covered the 2 lower floors with postal halls, offices, and sorting rooms. Large mail drops placed mail on a band conveyor in the basement to be taken up to the sorting room. All mail was sorted by hand. One of the most memorable features of the GPO was its curved surface counter, which was almost 90 meters or 300 feet long. The basement was linked to a 35-meter, 115-foot subway, also called the GPO Tunnel, that ran underneath Fullerton Road to a pier. From there, a lift would bring bags of mail to the master attendant's pier for transferring onto ships. Special mail was sent to neighboring countries via sea, thus requiring at least 2 months to reach the United Kingdom. Before postal workers were allowed to work, they had to pledge to uphold their integrity. As public servants, they were not allowed to leak any information on what went through them, including the origin of the mail. Everything at work was strictly confidential. People often sent money by post using envelopes, without using registered mail, due to the higher costs incurred. Thus, it was extremely important that postal workers were honest and did not steal any items that went through the mail. To reinforce the importance of confidentiality, the comptroller of the General Post Office would stand at the gallery above the sorting halls to observe all postal workers and ensure none of the letters or mail were opened while being sorted. Fridays were designated as arrival dates for overseas mail from Britain. Postal workers had to work overtime with no extra pay just to wait for the mail to arrive and then sort it. They were not entitled to any days off and had to work around the clock. They were also forbidden from personally separating local and overseas letters. The General Post Office continues to hold the Santa Claus main office even today. During Christmas seasons in the past, the post office would be filled with letters from children directed to Santa Claus. These letters were then sent to the Salvation Army, who would reply to the children on behalf of Santa Claus. Presently, these letters are forwarded to Santa Claus main office, which is situated in the Santa Claus village in Finland. The Singapore Club. The exclusive Singapore Club rents premises on the upper floors of the building to provide for the members' need and comfort. It originally allowed entry to European tycoons and British civil servants. There are rooms where members dined, lounged, conferred, and played billiards and cards. Bedrooms on the attic story provided accommodation for members. When the Economic Development Board, EDB, was formed in 1961, it evicted the Singapore Club from the Fullerton building. Subsequently, the Singapore Club relocated to Clifford House at Collier Quay, and then to the Straits Trading Building on Battery Road near Boat Quay, vacating the Fullerton building for use by the EDB and more government offices. World War II. In the last days before Britain's surrender to Japan in 1942, the building was used as a hospital with makeshift operation rooms for wounded British soldiers. During the Japanese occupation of Singapore, Governor Sir Shenton Thomas and Lady Thomas sought refuge in the sleeping quarters of the Singapore Club. The Fullerton building was also where General Percival discussed with Sir Shenton Thomas the possibility of surrendering Singapore to the Japanese. Subsequently, the Fullerton building became the headquarters of the Japanese military administration in Singapore. Post-war years. In the 1950s, the Fullerton building became recognized as an unofficial public monument. With its recognizable lighthouse, it stood out of the skyline as the most prominent feature of the waterfront. In time, the Fullerton became a symbol of Singapore, appearing in many postcards, recognized by travelers and ship captains from all over the world. In 1965, Fullerton Square hosted a rally for Singapore's independence. Before the majestic background of the Fullerton building, crowds declared their support for Merdeka independence. From the 1970s to 1995, the Inland Revenue Authority of Singapore used the building as its headquarters. Internal alterations were carried out on the building by the Public Works Department in 1985. The General Post Office, under Singapore Post, vacated the building in March 1996. Though plans were initiated to conserve the Fullerton building after that, it was only gazetted as a conservation building by the Singapore government in 1997. Redevelopment. In 1997, Sinoland Hong Kong Company Limited, a sister company of Far East Organization, acquired the Fullerton building from the Urban Redevelopment Authority, the URA. It spent close to another 300 million Singapore dollars converting the Fullerton building into a hotel and building the two-story commercial complex, One Fullerton, opposite Fullerton Road. Renovation works on the Fullerton building were completed on December 8, 2000. The Fullerton Hotel Singapore was officially opened by then Prime Minister Goh Chok Tong on January 1st, 2001. The site, sandwiched between the Civic District and the Central Business District, was sold together with an underpass and the seafront site on which One Fullerton now stands for 110 million Singapore dollars. The two are linked by an air-conditioned underground pedestrian walkway with travelators. To ensure that the historical Fullerton building continues to be visible from Marina Bay, URA specified a low building height for One Fullerton's across the road. This also ensured that guests at the Fullerton Hotel would have unobstructed views of the sea. Gazetting as a national monument. The building was officially gazetted on December 7, 2015 as Singapore's 71st National Monument. The building will be preserved under the Preservation of Monuments Act. Awards. The Fullerton Hotel Singapore won the Condé Nast Traveller Gold List Award. On July 18, 2001, the hotel received an Architectural Heritage Award from the Urban Redevelopment Authority for its successful restoration of the former Fullerton building. Now for our own tour of the Fullerton Hotel Heritage Gallery. The Fullerton Heritage is named after Scotsman Sir Robert Fullerton, 1773 to 1831. He was the first governor of the Straits Settlements from 1826 to 1830. In 1829, he built Fort Fullerton at the mouth of the Singapore River to defend the harbor. Fullerton returned to Europe in 1830 and died in London on 6th June 1831. Here is a map of the location of Fort Fullerton, which was built in 1829. The Fullerton Heritage Precinct is rich in history and stories. In fact, the story of modern Singapore started here. In 1819, Sir Stamford Raffles disembarked on the shores of Singapore just meters from the Fullerton building, where you are now standing. A few years later, Fort Fullerton was built to protect the Singapore River and the surrounding precinct. Since then, the Fullerton Heritage Precinct has been the center of Singapore's development. The precinct has witnessed Singapore transform from a fishing village to a first world metropolis. It stood through World War II, the departure of the colonial government, independence of the nation, and the rise of the civic and financial districts. The Fullerton Heritage Precinct is at the heart of Singapore. The center of Singapore. Mile zero refers to the point in a city from which all addresses take their bearings. While the General Post Office was operational at the Fullerton building, it was Singapore's Mile Zero. You are now standing at the one-time literal center of Singapore. Then there is some stuff about uploading your picture to the Fullerton Media channel. The General Post Office. The Fullerton building was not just a magnificent building. It was designed with the General Post Office, GPO, in mind. Trade was booming. The river was at the center of commerce and international communications grew. The GPO became the nerve center of trade and communications. Besides its majestic design, the GPO was modern and efficient. It was not only the GPO that made it the center of trade and communications. Over time, the Fullerton building also housed the Ministry of Finance, which included the Department of Trade, the Economic Board, the Monetary Authority of Singapore, and the Inland Revenue Department. Within this building, deals were struck, propelling Singapore's economy forward. People exchanged information, expatriates and migrants would gather, awaiting news from home. It buzzed with social and commercial activities. It pulsed with a life of its own. The inner workings of the post office. The post office occupied 3 floors and almost 10,500 square meters of the 6-story building. The lasting image most people have of the GPO is the 90-meter long wooden postal counter, possibly the longest in the world at the time. Countless people transacted over the counter, but few saw its inner workings. For the first time ever, we have recreated the ground floor plan of the GPO at the Fullerton building, one of the most important post offices of the world during its time. The new post office is a revelation of modern postal equipment and organization. The Straits Times, 27th June, 1928. The Fullerton building, the jewel of the precinct. This building is and will be for many years one of the principal landmarks of Singapore. Sir Hugh Clifford, Governor of the Straits Settlements, at the opening of the Fullerton building, 1928. The island was in a jubilant mood when the Fullerton building opened in 1928. The decision to erect the building was conceived in 1919, Singapore's centenary year. This was right after World War I, which ended with an Allied victory. The building was a symbol of hope, optimism, and an inspiration for the future. The Fullerton building was a marvel when it opened. It was majestic. It made its presence felt in the district. The Fullerton building presided over many of Singapore's significant moments. Many trade deals were made. Historical decisions were taken. Romances flourished in and around the building. Declared a national monument in December 2015, the Fullerton building, now the Fullerton Hotel Singapore and the precinct, continued to be at the center of the Singapore story. The Fullerton Heritage Gallery, where history meets the future. And it's time for a few cups of tea here.